Chris Regan had just given 2 weeks' notice at work. He was about to meet Kelly Cochran, his secret lover from the office, for lasagna and maybe a little fooling around. His friend Terry O'Donnell says she never heard from him after that.
I got really concerned and started asking people if they had seen him around. And one of the guys that he works with just assumed that he had left. He just didn't come back to work.
Terry spent nearly 2 excruciating weeks with no word from Chris. Frantic and in full panic mode, she went to the apartment Chris rented from her parents.
Shambles. It was a wreck. Stuff scattered everywhere, dirty dishes all crusted in the kitchen sink, red goo in the bottom of his wine glass. The windows were open, the apartment was cool, his medication was all there. I mean, he hadn't been there, he was gone.
It's like he vanished.
He vanished.
Vanished, but where and how? Chris recently had knee surgery, so he couldn't have walked into the wilderness. Somehow, his car ended up in a park and ride lot 4 miles east of town.
And I said he would never leave his car at the park and ride. And so I drove out there, and sure enough, there was Chris's car sitting there, and I looked in, and his things were in there. Inside the car was his knee brace, his water bottle.
So then what did you do?
I drove over to the police department to report him as a missing person.
I saw this woman pull up in front of the police department, and I noticed the woman was crying, and she turned and looked at me and just kind of stood there crying like she needed help.
Laura Frizzo was then the police chief of Iron River.
I asked her, who did Chris Regan hang out with? And she did mention to me that she had heard a rumor that he was seeing some married woman at the workplace.
So what happened next?
I called the Human Resources Director. She also had told me that she heard the rumor that Chris was having an affair with Kelly Cochran.
So now 2 people, Chris's friend Terry and the HR director at his office, tell Chief Frizzo about the affair.
So right now you have a missing man, you have a love triangle, and the man who's missing from the love triangle is the boyfriend, the one who was having the affair with the wife.
Right, right.
Everyone else thought it was what?
We had a difference of opinion. The detective that was basically in charge had said over and over again that Chris Regan disappeared because he wanted to, that he either killed himself or just disappeared.
But Chief Frizzo's dogged determination convinced the other detectives. In Chris's car, they found a key clue pointing straight to Kelly.
On the front passenger seat was a small piece of paper with directions written on it, and the directions were to Kelly Cochran's house.
Bingo.
Right.
What's your gut telling you?
My gut is telling me that we need to make contact with this Kelly Cochran.
Cops and Michigan State Police converge on the house Kelly shared with her husband Jason and aren't exactly greeted with open arms.
When they arrived there, the sergeant said they pulled up out front, and one of the troopers made mention to her that he saw someone standing in an upstairs window looking out. When they went to the door, they were greeted by a man, asked if Kelly was home. The man said, no, she's not here, and she hasn't done anything wrong.
Red flag number 1. Jason lied. Kelly was there. She was the shadowy figure in the upstairs window.
Shortly thereafter, Kelly came down and actually came to the door. So Kelly says she hadn't seen Chris for a couple days. She had no idea where he could be.
Red flag number 2. Just a couple of days? At this point, it's been more than 2 weeks since anyone has seen or heard from Chris.
Did she describe what kind of relationship she had with Chris?
Well, she didn't go into detail, but she did admit they had a romantic relationship going on.
Then what happens?
Sergeant called me and said there's something wrong. She asked Kelly, would it be unusual for Chris to have left his vehicle at this park and ride? Kelly's response was yes, that would be unusual. He loved that car. Past tense.
Red flag number 3.
He loved that car.
Yes.
As opposed to saying he loves that car.
Right.
Those red flags were waving in the winds of suspicion. Cops asked Kelly and her husband Jason to come down to the station for an interview. Jason is in the hot seat first, and instead of talking about Chris, he oddly tells detectives if he sneezes, he can't walk.
I have back issues. We used to call them slip discs. Now they call them bulging and deteriorating discs. So if I sneeze or move wrong, a lot of times I can't walk or can't stand up straight for months at a time.
It's like, you have a person missing, why are you telling me about your back pain?
He's trying to kind of change directions on what the focus is, so that maybe they won't look at him as a possible suspect.
Then it's Kelly's turn, and it's probably a good thing Jason wasn't in the room.
I love Chris.
She describes in graphic detail the animal passion in her secret love life.
Well, a lot of times we didn't actually make it to the bedroom.
You could have been in the living room.
Yeah,
Do you remember where you were the last time?
I think it was in the living room.
And then Kelly said something that raised everyone's eyebrows. She claims Chris didn't come over for dinner, even though cops found the directions to her house in his car.
On that last day, you went and brought dinner. And you brought what?
Lasagna.
So you brought a pan of lasagna?
Plate.
You brought a plate with pieces of lasagna? Or what?
Yes.
You brought a plate of lasagna, and you made it garlic bread and then cooked it in the oven?
I think it was a skillet.
Her phone records and the communication with Chris Regan indicate that she wasn't at his apartment at that time because they were communicating after that.
And this surveillance video shows Kelly was at Chris's apartment 2 days after he seemingly vanished.
Did you ever see her with the lasagna?
No, and actually, that was the first thing I looked for when we did get the search warrant to go in, was any remnants of lasagna.
No lasagna, no Chris, and no evidence to connect Kelly and Jason to his disappearance. Soon after, the couple moves back to Indiana. Chief Frizzo thinks they've killed Chris, and she wonders, could there be hidden clues still lurking in the house where they once lived? Next, the police chief tries an unconventional approach to finding Chris Regan.
My friend did approach me and said, you know, I have this friend that she's like a psychic medium.
Help from the other side.
What did you see in your vision?
The psychic takes Crime Watch Daily inside the house where she receives some chilling premonitions.
Sometimes people, when they're going to commit a crime, they will go and search stuff on Google, like how to dispose of a body. Evidence I found on the computers were Google images, satellite imagery of the Caspian pit.